Watch this vidcast, or I'll gouge your eyes out.
Welcome back, horror hounds, to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. So, this is our first virtual podcast, Ghostman and Rivera in the age of the coronavirus.
Reporting to you from quarantine.
Yeah, so Mike and I are actually at separate houses. This is the first time we've ever done a podcast like this, so it's a little bit different. Mike has some news stories for you, and I have some updates for you. So before we get to, Mike is going to have give you some news stories and some updates, but before that, I wanted to talk about some of the films that had been released. Remember earlier in the year, Mike, we did a podcast announcing all the stuff, all the horror movies coming out 2020 and the release dates?
Oh yeah, just cancel that podcast.
That podcast is completely irrelevant now since everything has been switched out, since movie theaters are closed. And before we get started, I don't know if you heard the news that AMC might not even be able to open back up after this.
Ooh.
Like, it's bad, and AMC is the biggest theater chain in the country. So I just want to tell everybody out there, as soon as this is over, if you want to preserve the theatrical experience, please go out and support. And I'm pretty sure people will start flooding movie theaters as soon as this is over because people are going to be excited to get back into the world. But support it as soon as it gets back, because this is going, the movie industry is going to take a hit because of this.
Yeah, because the movie theaters don't make a whole lot of money off the movies themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They make the money off the crowd that comes and pays for all the concessions and stuff. So they're completely dead in the water.
Yep, they are. So keep in mind, especially with independent movie theaters and more local ones, try to support them as soon as it opens up. Hopefully this will be done in a few months. So without further ado, I'm going to get started with a list of movies that have been rescheduled. Now, A Quiet Place 2, which is probably the highest profile one, it was supposed to be released March 20th of last month. It has been pushed back to Labor Day, September 4th of this year. So we'll be seeing that later this year, hopefully. This is a big one to be pushing back.
Oh, yeah.
The next one is The New Mutants. This movie is fucking cursed.
I know.
I feel bad. They've been postponing this for years, and they finally, like, on-off reshoots, rescheduled. Finally, was going to be released this month. So they have to reschedule, and as of now, they don't have a release date. It's unconfirmed. A lot of these movies, they're holding off to see when it's going to be possible for them to show.
Could it be that we're all victims of the New Mutants curse?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are. Here's the next one, is another superhero horror movie. Morbius, the Jared Leto vampire movie, was supposed to release July 31st, 2020. We now are seeing that it's going to be pushed to March 19th, 2021 next year. So you're going to have to wait about a year for that.
Damn.
It's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Antlers, which looked pretty
But I think A Quiet Place 2, I think they're being optimistic, aren't they?
I think they are, but I mean, you got to be optimistic. Otherwise, what are you going to look forward to?
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's also take it a increment at a time, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Antlers, which actually another horror film that looked pretty cool, was supposed to be April 17th. It's been rescheduled to an unconfirmed release date. Run, which is another one, is going to be released May 8th. Now it's being rescheduled to an unconfirmed release date. Fear Street, the R.L. Stein, the adaptation of the... you read Fear Street before, Michael, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're making an adaptation of that, which is R.L. Stein's more, like, adult line. I guess it's for young adults.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be released on June 5th, 2020. We don't know when it's going to be released now.
Okay.
Here's a big one that I'm disappointed. Saint Maud, originally scheduled for April 10th, 2020 on Easter. Religious horror film was a perfect... They had, like... The A24 had a perfect release date for this one as far as marketing goes. And now we don't know when it's going to be released. That's one I was really looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they have enough faith in it where they really want it to play on big screen. They don't want to screen it streaming.
A24, I mean, with a few exceptions, they don't really. I mean, they've done a couple, but they really try to stick with theatrical releases unless they can't figure out how to market a movie.
Yeah.
One Sweetheart Run was supposed to be May 8th, 2020. Now it has been rescheduled to an unconfirmed date. A lot of these are unconfirmed. The next one is confirmed. Ghostbusters Afterlife. We were going to get that July 10th of this year. Now we are getting it March 5th, 2021.
Okay.
So this keeps getting put. A lot of people were really excited for this movie. Now they're going to have to wait about a year when originally they were going to wait a few months. But something like Ghostbusters, with the type of hype that it has and the marketing and the brand and the budget, there's no way they weren't going to hold off until until movie theaters opened up. They were never.
So we're not going to have a summer blockbuster season then. It's going to be weird.
And this is me just going through horror movies. If you go through the release schedule, the summer blockbuster season is canceled.
Yeah, they don't even have anything rescheduled or anything, huh?
Yeah, because they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with it. And for summer blockbusters, those movies are usually really high budgeted. So studios don't spend that much money just to release it onto a streaming website.
Yeah, because even when the lockdown is lifted, there's not going to be a whole lot of gathering of a lot of people in one place for a while, you know?
People are still going to be a little bit paranoid.
Yeah.
Here's another one I was looking forward to. Spiral from the Book of Saw, the Chris Rock Saw movie, May 15th, 2020, has been rescheduled to an unconfirmed release date.
And not many are picking a date, huh?
Mm-mm. Here's one that I know that this is going to make you sad, Michael. Malignant. It was originally going to be released August 14th, 2020, and it has been rescheduled to an unconfirmed release date. Warner Brothers is actually pushing Wonder Woman 1984 to go in this release date, and Warner Brothers actually is a studio for Malignant and Wonder Woman. So I guess because Wonder Woman is such a big budget thing, they're trying to keep it to the summer. That's being optimistic. I don't even know if Wonder Woman's going to make it to theaters by August 14th, 2020. I hope it does. And Malignant will have to be scheduled to another date. I don't know when they're going to figure that out, but we'll see. Here's a couple that look like they are still on for now. The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, September 11th, 2020. Looks like, barring the possibility that this goes further, I think we should. It looks like it'll be released September 11th, 2020. What a
I'm more curious about that one than excited.
Candyman, scheduled for June 12th, 2020. They have not pulled it off the schedule yet. Man, that's one I was particularly excited for ever since I saw the trailer for it. That's one that I really wanted to see. And of course, Halloween Kills, October 16th, 2020 is still on because that's much, much later in the year, and they're hoping that's going to be fine. So as you can see, all the horror movies that we were talking about have all been pushed back. So that podcast from earlier no longer counts.
Disregard that one.
Yes. So yeah, all those are going to be pushed back, with the few possibilities that the last ones I mentioned are still going to run on time.
Yeah.
Crazy times we're living in.
I know. Well, with news, there hasn't been much news to speak of at all. That's why I'm doing it by myself today.
Horror show news.
There's a few things that have been happening over the past few weeks since we've been off with our little hiatus on the podcast. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to bring up the elephant in the room real quick about those videos that we did, the video messages, and we posted it as our last podcast, like a message to our fans.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you're eloquent. You're talking about this great cinema, well spoken, and here's my dumb ass in there talking about eating ass.
Well, I tried to talk a little bit about giving some advice.
And you see who's the better speaker out of the two in that video, man.
It's okay. I think it came out fine.
I'm a better writer than I am the speaker. Also, stay tuned later in the podcast. After I finish the news, we're going to play an interview that we did yesterday with CHLOE CARROLL from FEARCRYPT.com. But first, I'll get through some news.
Horror show news.
First of all, the saddest news by far is that Stuart Gordon died on March 24th at age 72, the great horror director. Mark Duplass and Patrick Brice are struggling with the concept for Creep 3. The Walking Dead Season 10 finale will not air as planned on April 12th.
Why?
And, I know.
Okay. More on that.
Adam Green is doing something on his YouTube page called Coronapocalypse, where he hosts his own movies and talks about them, interacts with fans, and he has special guests and stuff. And then Horror Shows on Susie Block is in a new music video. Mm-hmm. So starting with Stuart Gordon, as I mentioned, he died on March 24th at age 72. It was a multiple organ failure. This man was a beast.
How old is he?
As a horror director? He did Reanimator in 85, From Beyond in 86, Dolls in 87, The Pit and the Pendulum in 91, Fortress in 92, Castle Freak in 95, Dagon in 2001, and the Masters of Horror Dreams in The Witch House in 2005. This man was a master. He was a true master of horror.
I was very sad to hear this. It's funny enough, I barely started binging all of his stuff last year. So I was able to familiarize myself with his filmography before he passed away, because it was a big blind spot.
Almost all his movies are fun, but they have layers and depth to them, you know? I love all his movies with Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs. We got cut off.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're still getting used to this. Yeah, Reanimator is one of the all-time classic horror movies, one of the best horror films of the 80s, one of the best splatter movies, and easily one of the funniest horror movies I've ever seen. And it's funny, and it's kind of campy in a way that doesn't sacrifice how fucking bizarre and off the wall the horror elements of it are. Yeah.
And that Reanimator was even made into a really good musical. I seen they staged a scene of it at the Weekend of Horrors one year as a convention. And it was really cool. And I'm not surprised that it played so well as a play and as a musical, because I didn't know until after he died that Stuart Gordon was famous for like experimental theater.
I didn't even know that either.
I know. He was like almost as famous as he was a filmmaker. He was famous among the theater circles.
Yeah. Man left behind quite a legacy.
Yeah, he did. And sure has inspired me, that's for sure.
Rest in peace to the great legendary Stuart Gordon.
Yep. I only recently seen Castle Freak. I wish I hadn't waited so long. That movie is so good. Our next story is pretty sad too, but not quite as sad as Stuart Gordon dying. As you may know if you watch the podcast or listen to the podcast, that James and I both love Creep and Creep 2. Well, they are developing Creep 3, but Mark Duplass and Patrick Brice are struggling with the concept. Mark Duplass told IndieWire, we had to almost kill ourselves to make Creep 2 as good as it was. I appreciate how many people liked it, but I do feel like it wasn't as good as it could have been. What? If I'm being perfectly honest. He went on to say, if we're going to make a third one, it better be super inspired. We're trying and we're putting effort into it. We are not good enough yet to make it worthwhile. So we are struggling. That's really it. We've written it twice, and neither of those stories are good enough. The most shocking part of that is that he doesn't think Creep 2 was that good.
I know, but you know how it is as a filmmaker when you're doing production, like the short films I've done and the feature film and the short films you've done. I'm sure every time you look back on something, there's something that you're not completely satisfied with, or you feel that things could have been done better. But what they forget is a lot of the times those things that they see wrong, whether or not these things may or may not be true, but most of the time the audience doesn't know. These are things that are only relevant to the creator and to the director and to the writer, where you look back and go, damn, if I would have did this now, I would have fixed this, or I would have done X, Y, and Z instead of doing that. So while we love Creep 2, he needs to remember his idea of it not being good enough is based on things that the audience will never understand. It'll be based on because we weren't in on the process. We can only judge the finished product, and the finished product to me was pretty fucking awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, we're in a lot of those horror groups and social media online, and those are a picky group of fuckers who don't like anything. Creep and Creep 2 were both pretty well received. I don't see too many complaints about it. So I hope that he keeps that in mind, that fans loved it. We really liked it.
It doesn't even get as much hate as most found footage films do.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And that's something that's pretty rare for found footage films to get received, that much lack of a backlash for it to have.
Yeah.
So, Creep 2, maybe the things that he sees are things that only he's going to notice because they're the filmmakers, but I hope somehow they get Creep 3 done. I really love the first two of my favorite found footage films. In fact, Creep, the first Creep is probably, and as you know if you listen to the podcast, that's one of my top 10 horror movies of the last decade. I really loved it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've noticed that a lot of directors are like that. They're a stickler for their own content. Like Adam Green and Joe Lynch talk about it all the time. Adam Green, it pains him to go back and watch his movies, except for Frozen. He's really proud of Frozen. But Joe Lynch is even worse. He's really down on himself and down on his own movies because they can't look at it without seeing all the little mistakes they made and all the little shortcomings. But with me, I'm not a director like that. I can still be proud of the stuff I've made, even early on, even some of the embarrassing stuff, because I did the best I could at the time. So I don't look back like that. I just look forward. Mm-hmm. But I can understand how he can be really picky, because you can tell with Creep 1 and 2 that they're really picky about the story and making it 100% authentic and grounded.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully they get it back on track.
Yeah.
And of course, even still, I mean, they have plenty of time to take advantage of it right now. I mean, they're going to have to refashion the script. I'm sure with everything going on, they're not going to be shooting that movie anytime soon.
Yeah.
So,
well, if they're agonizing over it enough to admit in the press that they're struggling with it, you know it's going to turn out badass. The next story is the Walking Dead story. This is mostly coming from me because it
fucking sense to me.
Yeah, James has never been a Walking Dead fan. So
I'm not a Walking Dead fan. But that's besides the point. You're saying it's being delayed?
Well, they just aired episode 13. So there's 16 episodes in the season. Mm-hmm. They're still going to air episode 14 and 15 in their scheduled days. But they cannot air the finale because it's not done yet. They finished filming it, but the lockdown came around before they finished the post-production. So there's nobody in their post-production house to finish it. So they're going to have to release it later as a single episode. So
okay.
AMC said in a statement, current events, which is coronavirus, have unfortunately made it impossible to complete post-production of The Walking Dead Season 10 finale. So the current season will end with its 15th episode on Sunday, April 5th. The planned finale will appear as a special episode later in the year.
I find this strange because, I mean, I don't know what the exact situation is, but if you're transferring footage and stuff like that, most of post-production could be done separately. It's not a job. It's not like the filmmaking process where it requires a big group of people. Somebody can color correct footage on their own. Somebody could edit it from their computer. So that strikes me as a strange complaint. I was just, for a second, I thought they were just canceling it because of the coronavirus.
Oh, no.
I was going to say, people want their at-home content right now. Why would you fucking cancel something?
Well, what it could be, like, judging from, like for instance, my wife works for AT&T, and she's considered an essential worker for some reason because she answers phones for AT&T and takes care of people's cell phone needs. So they had her come home today. So she's working from home, but they really had to agonize over that because they were afraid that people would get home and start hacking into people's accounts and all that. So they're afraid of a higher chance of piracy if they let it go out into people's homes, and it could be hacked easier, maybe.
That's possible. Piracy for like early footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past anybody.
So obviously it's a huge undertaking. Like I know a couple people who work for production houses, and they worked up until the last possible minute where they had to go home. But once they went home, they were done. They did no more work for them. So everything's going pretty nuts right now. But while I'm on the subject of Walking Dead, I might as well continue my analysis of this season, which, as you know from listening to the podcast, it went completely off the rails last season for me. Or at the first half of the season before the hiatus, and I was pretty much done with it. It went from me loving every episode to like laboring to get through it. And then when I got back into it, it was hard for me to stay awake on some of the episodes.
That's saying something for you, because you've been loyal to that show even when most of the audience for it has been disappearing very rapidly.
Yeah. So here where we're at with this season. We're on season 13. We've had 3 really good episodes. Episode 3 was by far the best episode of the season. Some of their best characters shined in that episode. There was a lot going on. Really well made, really well structured. And then episode 10 came up, and episode 10 was really strong. And so was episode 12, but not as strong as episode 3. Now 13 comes along, and it starts to completely go off the rails, because everything that they got us excited about in episode 12, they shift their focus to just Michonne. And Michonne's on her little quest, and it gets really annoying because it's out of character for her to be so trusting to someone. And she keeps trusting this stranger, and he keeps screwing her over and keeps playing games with her, and she keeps falling for it. So it's really annoying. But by the end of the episode, it kind of comes full circle and becomes really good. And it ultimately leads to a big reveal, and then Michonne's exit from the show. So I'm not really understanding Michonne's exit from the show. I mean, it was a cool scene. I didn't realize she was exiting the show until they said afterwards on The Talking Dead. But she kind of went off with another faction of people that were going off in another direction, because she's going to find Rick. So I guess she's going to be a part of Rick's Walking Dead movie when it comes out, so she left the show. So that's where Walking Dead is right now.
Sounds pretty haphazard to me, like it's pretty much all over the place.
Yeah, still some good stuff going on, and I'm hanging in there, but man, they're making it hard for me.
Yeah. Well,
so our next story is Adam Green doing Corona Apocalypse. As I mentioned, it's on Aeroscope's YouTube page. Today is Friday. He's doing YouTube at youtube.com/Aeroscope. He's doing his movie Frozen. So he's going to have some special guests. So I'm not sure what he has coming up after that, but check out his Instagram. I believe it's Adam_FN_Green on Instagram. So check him out. Last but not least is Horror Show's own Susie Block is in a new music video. Yes. It's a song called Lost on You by the band Robson. Not only is it an excellent video, it's a badass song. I cannot stop listening to this song, and I can't stop watching his videos because it fits so perfectly with it. And it's a great story that goes behind it too. Because she knew a guy from this band Robson, right? So he wanted to make a video for this song Lost on You, and he wanted to use old film footage. So he told Susie about his plan to use old film footage. So she was like, oh, I got some old film footage of my friend walking around the streets with Super 8 cameras, film cameras. And so I'll just take that and I'll edit it together for him so he'll see what old film footage looks like with his video. He liked it so much he kept the video that she edited together. So she stars in it, filmed some of it, and edited it herself.
So our very own Susie Block, star of a music video. And just so you know, Susie Block has been on a couple of our shorts before. We both have directed her. I directed her in a short that I did called Misogynistic Losers from season 2, where I had her play a psycho. You had her in, what was it? You had her in...
I Don't Believe in Bloody Carrie.
I Don't Believe in Bloody Carrie. You had her in something else, too. We've worked with her so many times.
Yeah, it was something else, too.
I know we've had her on the show a few times, and we've had her on the podcast too. If you've listened, go back, listen to episodes. We've had her on the podcast. Stephen King is actually a fan of her, likes her work, follows her. So that's always pretty cool. I'm really proud of her. I did get a chance to see the video. I thought it was really cool. I thought it fit the song really well. I like the song. I like the music. And I'm happy because this is basically her music video. Basically, she directed it. I mean, she stars, like you said, she acts, and she edited before. And to be honest, I didn't even know she edited before. So that actually caught me by surprise.
And it's really well edited. Like the shots that she chooses, and then the ones that she chooses to repeat, and the way the video flows, it just fits the song so well, and it just takes you into a world that it feels like that song inhabits, and it feels natural.
And really quick, a correction: I directed her in season 1, not season 2.
Oh yeah,
I was saying season 2, season 1. I apologize, but the short I did with her is probably the short that I'm most proud of. That I've directed, that I've written and directed. And largely it's because of how well she did, because of her performance and her dedication and the center of it. So I don't think it would have came out half as good if we did not have her on it.
And am I right that she takes the words that you write and just makes them her own, and makes them sound better than they did when they were on the page?
Yeah. Not only that, she actually got what I was going for when I was directing it. There were less things I had to communicate with her because she already kind of had a handle on it herself. So I'm really proud of this. I'm really proud of her. I'm proud of her creative endeavor, because to edit together a music video, which I've done before, is pretty challenging.
Everybody check it out. It's Lost on You by the band Robson, Robson.
Yes.
Check it out on YouTube.
So is that it for the news?
And that's it. We are pretty dry with news this week.
All right.
But we got lots of movies to discuss, though. But we're going to play the interview first, right?
Yeah. So we got a special treat for our audience right now. This is a 15 or 20-minute interview that we conducted with CHLOE CARROLL. She's the owner of for FEARCRYPT.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm sure we'll give more details on the interview, so check it out.
Horror show exclusive.
Okay, we are now on Zoom with CHLOE CARROLL from FEARCRYPT. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing today, CHLOE?
Good. Everything's good. Sat in quarantine, but great otherwise.
Oh, you're an actor, producer,
Yes.
and you started FEARCRYPT yourself?
Yeah, yes, I did a short film with my husband, and it was the first horror film we'd done together, and I wanted to have a brand for that film and for any future horror films that I did, so I created FEARCRYPT. And then since then, I've been doing all my short films under that brand.
Okay, but your first one wasn't under that brand?
It was, yes. It
Oh,
was
so you formed it to release the short, basically?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So what made it grow into what it is now, which is taking submissions from other filmmakers, right? And doing your own as well?
Yeah, so I just kept making short films, and because I had this brand that I made for myself, I just wanted to keep acquiring short films more and more. I haven't really took anyone else's yet. That's something I'd be open to in the future, but because my subscribers list isn't big enough yet where it would be appetizing for people to put their own short films on the FEARCRYPT website. But eventually, hopefully, if I can make more films and get more fans, then I would love to start putting other people's stuff on there too. I know that we gave the rights to 2 of our shorts to a YouTube channel called Kings of Horror, and they do it similar, but they do feature films on there and everything too, which is really cool. And it just got us a bit more publicity to go on a different site. So I'm hoping that when we're big enough, then we can do that for other people too. But right now it's super small.
Okay, but you're sending the invitation out there, right? And you want to get that going?
Yeah, it's out there if anyone wants to. I know we're not big enough yet, but hopefully one day.
What made you decide to get into the horror genre specifically?
So I have just always loved horror. I'm an adrenaline junkie myself, so anything that gets my adrenaline going, and especially with horror films, you're always sat there and it's an experience. When you watch a film, you're always like scared for the actors in the film or the characters. So I think that watching horror is one of the best genres to watch with people because it's such an experience as to watching like a drama film. It's still an experience, but you're not sat there like holding hands with your partner like, oh my god, what's gonna happen, like you do in a horror film compared to like other genres. So that's what I love about horror.
So you consider yourself a horror filmmaker then?
Yes, most of my films are horror. So yeah, I did just do a feature film which was like a thriller mix, because my husband's more into like the drama films. But mainly all my shots are horror.
What is your feature film about?
My feature film is about a struggling young couple, and I didn't direct this, by the way. This was directed by Philip, and who's Philip G. Carroll Jr. That's my husband. That's how you'll find that film. So it's about a struggling young couple, and they find an ad for $50,000 where if they just stay in a remote house in the middle of nowhere and are observed while they're in the honeymoon phase, they'll get paid, and that's it. It's like a Craigslist type ad, and they're like, oh yeah, let's do it, what could go wrong? And then they slowly start to find out that it is not what they thought it was, and there's more sinister forces going on.
It still has horror elements to it then?
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds really cool. So what would you say is your favorite part of making films? Would you rather be in front of the camera or behind the camera?
I prefer to act. That's my favorite thing in filmmaking, but I found a love for producing recently in the last few years, and I love every creative medium of filmmaking. So I've started writing my own stuff, but I love producing also. Directing I like to do too, but like it's not really my forte. I have to really love something to want to do. Stress of directing, I feel like that's the most stressful thing to do.
If you're like me, you got into producing because it's a necessity, because you really have to get into producing in order to release your stuff the way you want it, you know, instead of being beholden to a studio or something.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I mean, producing is probably the second most stressful part of production, but I think that you become a better filmmaker the more roles that you understand in the whole process. So even from, you know, the development of a script right through to are we doing a festival run, like it's important to know that whole chain instead of just like, you know, originally I was just an actor and I was like, oh, so we filmed the film and then it magically appears to me 8 months later. And then instead now I know like the whole process and like what goes into it. So when I'm on other sets, I understand.
For you, what's the most challenging part of the filmmaking process?
Getting the script right is really important because especially in my short films I normally collaborate with people. So getting a script that we all like is always tough because everyone has different tastes and opinions, and you know, no matter what film you like, there'll be someone who loves it and there'll be someone who hates it. So you have to come up with something that you think is going to be really good for one audience or like multiple audiences or whoever you're aiming the film at. And then after that is funding is always the number one hardest part of filmmaking, and has nothing to do with actually making the film. It's just like you need a budget to do like a more quality film.
Getting the film made and making the film are two separate things that you find out once you start getting into the business, and people don't know that there is a difference. There is a big difference between the two.
I think that's every indie filmmaker is probably like sat there watching this like, we understand.
What budget range do you usually work in, if you don't mind me asking?
So with the shorts, they're anything from like 800 to two grand. I did a one for a little bit more recently called Alicia, where I put in a little bit more money to make it so we could shoot longer. because I wanted to specifically do a festival run. As you know, with short films, they unless you put them into an anthology, they don't make any money, and all my funds eventually just go to YouTube. I don't make any money from that. It's just all something fun. But so this time I wanted to do a festival run with our most recent film. So I was like, let's put a bit more into this. Let's put a bit more, more time, a little bit more money. And I think we made a really solid project. And most of my shorts are 3 minutes long because I shoot for one day and do the 3 pages a day rule so that the film comes out, of a good quality, and we're not just shooting loads of footage that doesn't look great. But this one it's a 10-minute film, so we shot for 2 days.
Well, we just did a feature film. It's actually my first feature film.
Oh, cool! Congrats.
21 pages in a day. The budget was so small.
Oh man, that just makes me stressed. Just to hit.
It was stressful. Yes, it was.
5.5 days for a feature film. That's how it was shot on a very low budget. So a lot of constraints, a lot of pressure, but the process is fun even when it's challenging.
Yeah. It's like a love-hate relationship. I always talk to my husband about this. He's like, I hate filmmaking and I love it and I can't not do it, but I hate it's so stressful and it's just constant, especially on a feature film, but that seems very stressful. Is it what's your horror film about? Is it found footage or
No, it's called Pay Up, and it's about a guy who gets caught between a drug dealer and a dangerous cult.
Okay.
And a gory and invasive procedure is his only way out of it. So it's got special effects and everything.
Okay. Oh man, special effects too. We did a shot in a short film, Nefarious, and it's just literally a close-up of a picture frame and blood splatters on it. And it ended up taking us 3 hours because the blood wouldn't squirt properly.
Yeah.
It didn't right, and the shot is okay. And you wondered how long that took. You'd be like, what were you guys doing? Just anything with blood is unpredictable too.
Oh yeah.
And in the
Getting blood,
some really gory stuff, we had a head bounced off the wall, and we had one actor literally just threw blood on it, and that was a one take thing. So we had 3 cameras running. We were lucky because we were shooting on the Black Magic.
Oh.
When DP is gonna kill me for not getting this right. With the Black Magic camera, and we had a 2K version, a 4K version, and a 6K version, all at this girl, so we could throw the blood on and make sure we got the right shot. And we did it, and then we were check all the cameras, check if we got one usable shot of this.
Yeah. Man, no wonder your stuff looks so good.
Oh, thank you. I have such a good team, and we managed to do decent stuff with a low budget. So I think it's down to the whole team's talent.
Yeah, tell us about your team. Do you contract teams when you put together a short film, or do you have the same team that you work with on every film?
So I pretty much work with the same team, but we do a mixture of collaborators. So normally the main producers on my projects are big players in the film too. So I work with Wesley Malott a lot, and he has his own YouTube channel called Thinking Art Entertainment, and he's amazing, and he's a cinematographer, and he directs a lot of my stuff. So all the big players are collaborating on their own time and all own the film alongside me, and it all goes on their YouTubes too. And then the roles that we don't have, we'll just hire. But it keeps the budget low, and we all get content because all the producers I work with normally have their own YouTube channels, and they're like, damn, I just don't have any money to produce the content. And yeah, it kind of is saturating the market with the same film on multiple sites, but we all have separate fan bases. Mine, which is almost non-existent as of right now, but eventually he has the most. But we're hoping that we can all build with the content. And then we do like normally a festival run or a short festival run with some of the ones we really like first before it goes on. So that helps us get a little bit of
buzz going.
Yeah.
Out of all the short films that you shot, which one are you most proud of personally?
Alicia, which is it's not online yet. We just shot it in January or February. This quarantine has just got all my dates mixed up, and I don't know where I am right now. I think we shot in February. Yes, we did. And so we did a really quick turnaround. We got it edited, got all the posts done really quick, and we just submitted to festivals last week. Man, I'm hoping there is still a film festival circuit with this whole virus thing, because that was definitely a risk. But a lot of them are going online and stuff, and if they don't, like, that's the risk we took. But
that's what we're doing. We're entering our feature in all the festivals. We entered it in 5 big ones so far, and people are telling me, "What are you doing? It's a pandemic right now. We don't know what's going to happen with these festivals." I'm like, "Well, they'll screen eventually." Yeah.
Did you submit via Film Freeway?
Yeah, I'm going through there.
So do you have a gold membership?
No, I don't. I was looking into that. I was wondering if it'd be worth it to get that.
I did only because depending on how big of how much money you're putting into your festival run too, it ends up being cheaper if a lot of them are on gold anyway with the discounts. But they also give free submission protection, which means if that festival cancels, you get your money back. So it's like a good insurance. But right now, I would get gold.
That's not a bad idea.
And it's like a small monthly charge, right?
It's a $10.99 a month. If you get it, you also get so many discounts on the. I sound like I'm being paid to advertise Film Freeway Gold right now, which I'm not.
No, I'm sure anybody out here trying to make films, this is useful information on how to budget the festival run.
Yeah, and if you're putting a lot of money into it, I normally make like I am so OCD with my anything to do with my film production. So I have a whole festival sheet with like the dates and how much they cost and how much I save if I do gold. And normally because it's so cheap, you end up making you saving more money than you would spend not going with gold. And you can always cancel before the month ends. So it's like a one-off payment, which is normally when you submit anyway. Like you submit everything within. You've made your list in a few days, and then you could just cancel your subscription, and it's totally worth it. I do it.
Oh, cool! Thanks so much for that.
I think even though there's a pandemic going right now, and we don't know where we're going to be as far as festivals, I think it's important as artists always to take risks and send it anyway. Just because if you're trying to get your content out there, you don't want to have to wait to submit it next year, and then it takes 2 years to get something out that you just shot last month. So I would think that anybody who's hesitant on entering the festival run shouldn't hesitate for that reason. And knowing about the gold membership will probably make it more encouraging too.
Yeah, because it's totally worth it, and then if it doesn't work out, you get your money back. So it's a risk I would take if you're out there debating. I was thinking about it because I was like, oh man, like I could lose a lot of money here if all these festivals canceled. Then I saw the gold terms, it's like submission protection. I was like, well, it doesn't matter because I get it back if they cancel. And if it's different with a feature film, it's tough for you guys because like a short film, especially if the festival goes online, you're like, if someone I'm just blanking on the word, steals the film, like by filming it.
Pirates,
Pirates, totally blanked on that word. Then the short film, it's like it sucks, and people do it. Like we had a short film like 4 years ago that we put into the film festival circuit, and like online the next week someone had pirated our short film that was free on YouTube to watch in 4K free. And they pirated it anyway on and you could download the MP3 with like a 360 pp version. I was like, why? Like, but people, like, that's so scary with a feature film too, because like you can't really make, it's really hard to make money with shorts. I know some people do, and I want to know their secrets, but a feature film can. So it's I presume for the big ones they'll be more protected with it, but yeah, man, I feel your pain. Like, that's scary.
I mean, it's hard to make money with feature films too, you know. And people who pirate don't realize how much of a strain they put on indie filmmakers. They don't hurt the big studios that much, but they sure do hurt the indies.
Doing a feature film is so different to doing the short films, and especially when money's involved, it's like, it's so stressful because it's like, how can I make my money back? And it's like the odds are never good.
Yeah.
Especially
I don't feel like
you're unknown.
It shouldn't be called pirating because it makes these people, what they do, sound cooler than it actually is.
People are gonna do it. It sucks. They don't realize, because it's not like stealing a car, like where like it's you think, oh, you know, they're making loads of money, I'll just watch it right now, but it really does. It hurts the big studios too, just as much really as the indies, just on a different level. Like, they lose the millions, we just don't make anything. Like,
your next project is when is that going to be completed and available to watch?
So it kind of depends on if it does well in the festival circuit or not. If it does well, then we'll keep it in there, because most of them require it to be offline. But if it doesn't do great, it'll be online earlier, and if it does, we'll put it online right at the end of the festival run. So, like, fingers are crossed.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be in some of the same festivals.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And hopefully we can actually go to them in person, and if not, we'll watch them online via Zoom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're definitely going to watch out for all your work, and we look forward to seeing more of your short films, and we hope to see you do more feature films.
I have one question to go before you leave.
Yeah?
What is your favorite horror movie?
So I know, like, so many people probably say this, but my favorite horror movie is Nightmare on Elm Street. Just because I think it's so clever. I think the best horror movies target things that you have to do in everyday life, and I think that it was so clever to come up with something that happens while you sleep, because anyone who watches that movie is going to be like, I have to go to sleep tonight, and there's only so many days you can avoid it before you like die. So like, I just think that you targeted something that everyone has to face. I think it's so good, and I love the villain. I love Freddy. I just think it's great.
Yeah.
Cool
Well,
choice.
thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This is CHLOE CARROLL. Look out for her. Check out her site. It's what's your site?
It's FEARCRYPT.com, and if you type in FEARCRYPT on all social media and YouTube, you should be able to find our films. And thank you so much for going to check it out, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank
It was a
you.
pleasure.
Horror show exclusive.
All right, we hope you enjoyed that interview with CHLOE CARROLL.
She is so cool. I can't wait to check out more of her stuff.
She's beautiful too.
Yeah. Our first film we're going to discuss, we watched this. How long has it been since we watched The Hunt now?
About 3 weeks, but it feels like it's been longer than that, because March, as you know, all the memes made fun of this, how that month seemed to drag on for like a year. In all of March, the events of a full year were compressed into that short amount of time. So we saw it right before all the lockdowns went crazy. I think it was like a couple of days before the lockdowns got serious. We already knew it was headed in that direction, but we got to see a screening of The Hunt at the Egyptian Theater, the historic Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Beyond Fest.
At Beyond Fest, right before the theater was about to get shut down. So that was the last of it. So this film, The Hunt, a couple of things I wanted to say about it. It's directed by Craig Zobel. I'm most familiar with him through the show The Leftovers, which I'm a big fan of, which is created by Damon Lindelof, who is one of the writers for The Hunt. And Nick Cuse, who is another writer for The Hunt, is also was another writer for The Leftovers with Damon Lindelof. And they all worked together on Watchmen last year as well, the series. And I was a really big fan of Watchmen. I thought it was a fucking superb show. One of the best pieces of entertainment of last year. And The Leftovers, which they all collaborated on, is one of my favorite shows of all time, another HBO series. So I was really excited for this movie because of the creative team that was working on it is behind some of the best television of the past 5 or 6 years.
We were one of the choice few to get to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
And we also got to see Nick Cuse and Damon Lindelof in person, and you even got to take a picture with Damon Lindelof.
That kind of caught me off guard. I must not have been paying attention, but I didn't even realize he was going to be at the screening. And since I was already a big fan of his writing, I nearly shit my pants. It was really cool. I shook his hand, which is kind of not the smartest thing to do, especially when the coronavirus, now thinking back. And I want to thank him for that, because that was very polite and kind of you to shake my hand, me thoughtlessly reaching out to shake your hand during a pandemic. But
it was a fun and insightful interview too. Damon Lindelof also did Lost and Prometheus. Prometheus was really good, well written.
How did I forget that? I also like Prometheus a lot.
This is another one that's been plagued with problems, The Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
The release date was originally August 10th, but it was postponed because of 2 back-to-back mass shootings. The Trump comments would just push forward the plans that were already in place. But the movie stars Betty Gilpin from the show Glow, the Netflix show Glow. She was really good in it. She was the shining beacon in that movie. And Hilary Swank was really good in it, and also Ike Barinholtz and Emma Roberts were both really good. It's about 12 strangers who wake up in a clearing and realize that they're being hunted.
The film was delayed last year because of Trump comments. He tried to politicize this movie. And don't get me wrong, this already is a political movie. It's a very political movie, and it's not very subtle about it either. They make it very obvious that they're trying to get a point across. But I think it's a really funny satire. It's a lot different than I expected it to be, because it's a horror movie about being hunted, but it's about liberal elites, or limousine girls, as I would like to call them, hunting down Trump supporters. And what's funny, Trump is never mentioned once in the film, but unless you've been living under a rock or you're really stupid, it's pretty obvious who they're referring to throughout the most of the movie and what they're referring to. But the good thing about this movie is that these conservatives, Trump supporters, are being hunted down, and the movie does poke fun at the cliches of what it is to be a Trump supporter in America, what they believe, but the movie also skewers liberals and their political correctness, how they're overly sensitive. And for my money, I actually think this is a little bit harder on the left than it is on the right.
They made much more fun of the left, I think, because I don't know, I hate to say it, but Trump supporters are a little easier to make fun of.
I don't like those. It's a bit easy for parody.
Yeah,
satire.
And to be honest, once you see the movie, you see really how easy it is to skewer the liberal elites too. It's not so hard as you think.
So it's a very political movie, and what struck me most about it is that it was different because one of the things that I liked about The Leftovers and The Watchmen is the writing is very subtle and it's very layered, and it lets everything seep in slowly. You start to the themes become crystallized as it goes on. But since this is not a series, this is a movie, the writing on this is much more blunt and more in your face than on their television writing, because I guess probably because they have to convey the information a lot faster than an hour and a half. But even removing the political aspects of this film, it's an exciting horror action thriller with a lot of really good suspense sequences and fantastic pieces of gore that are really inventive. I like that it has one of the best first 15 minutes of a movie in recent memory. only because the movie toys with your expectations. What you like when you go see a film, when the protagonist is set up, it becomes clear who you follow. This movie tricks the audience about a handful of times. Just when you think you're settling in with the characters and the story, the movie blows it up in your face like, nope, that's not what it is. Nope, that's not what it is. It takes a little while.
That's why that first scene reminded me of Scream, because they set it up to where someone's going to be the star of it. But then they do that, like you said, they do that a few times.
Yeah.
So it always feels dangerous and unpredictable because of that.
And the early kills in the movie all caught me off guard, mostly because the movie sets itself up to feel like, okay, you're following this protagonist, and just when you're getting used to it, just when the audience has this chance to orient themselves to what's going on, it throws you for a loop and kind of resets it a few times. And it kind of made me laugh because after a few times I'm like, they're gonna do this again, and when you do, you expect it to be stupid but it still manages to catch you off guard. And when the main protagonist finally does settle in, you're always on edge because the movie has put you in a state of mind where you expect whoever you're following to be annihilated at any moment. Almost like Game of Thrones, what they do with their characters when you set them up, except in a much more compressed amount of time. So the main character, you're always in doubt as to her safety.
And plus, the main character, the one who ends up being a main character, is in the background at the beginning.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, she was in the background for a good half of the movie before she really started shining. And wow, did she shine once she started.
Betty Gilpin is a really good female action hero. She reminds me a little bit of Ripley Sigourney Weaver. But a little bit drier. I liked her performance because the way that she presents herself on screen, she has this really good thing of making herself seem like she's in over her head. And she is in over her head, don't get me wrong, but she's a lot more resourceful and she's a lot more intelligent than she lets on. And I feel that the performance conveys the fact that the reason she's able to get through so many of these absurd situations that most people would have a hard time getting out of is she lets everybody underestimate her throughout the entire movie. They're thinking because she's a MAGA or a Trump supporter that she's a simple-minded person or that she's not smart. But she does this really good thing with her acting where she makes faces where she looks like she's in over her head, where to somebody else, to the other characters on screen, she looks like she's lost, but you could tell that the wheels are constantly spinning and she's trying to think of a way out of her situation. And I really liked her performance because of that, because it conveys that she as a person probably gets through life because everybody underestimates her and underestimates how intelligent and resourceful she is.
And a lot of her best acting is just in her face without her saying a thing. You can see a lot of it. That includes the drama, the comedy, the intense scenes. You can see it all in her face.
The deadpan comedy. And I like the right before she does, like, there's this one scene in a car, I'm not going to reveal what she does, but she does something pretty extreme when she's in a car with somebody else. And right before she does it, she looks around really confused and does something really smart. And it catches you off guard because you think she's confused, but the entire time she's plotting something else. Really great performance from Betty Gilpin. Probably the highlight of the movie. And without an actress like that to anchor all of the carnage and the satire, it would not have worked as well. And I actually think it's a pretty unique performance. It's not the type of performance that you usually get from a horror action protagonist.
Yeah. And another thing I loved about it is how they found these Trump supporters. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that they found these Trump supporters through talking shit online. They were trolling online, and just something they said just really stuck it to these liberals. So that's how they found them. So they found them through social media and kidnapped them. They use that later on as, how the mistaken identity thing comes into play. Yeah, and adds another layer to the movie that just makes it funnier and more effective. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of layers like that in this movie that I really like. Snappy dialogue. It's a gory variety of highly effective kills. And I always love when the tables get turned on the evil rich people.
One other thing I like about the end, you're never sure if the main character who she's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It leaves you a little bit in doubt as to what her true motives were.
And by the way, they show that final fight in the trailer, and you're anticipating it the whole time, and it's still really exciting and really well made. All the action is really well filmed. It's exciting. The hits look like they have impact. It's dangerous. It's intense.
A lot of booby parts flying about in this movie, especially with all the booby traps and the explosions. You get to see a good variety of viscera.
And a lot of people being blown to pieces or hit mid-sentence. Like they're in the middle of their dialogue. It's like, blah!
If you have a sick sense of humor, you'll probably laugh at it. It's not going to horrify you. I found myself busting up, and the crowd that I was in thought it was pretty funny too. I could see that a lot of people are not going to like this movie because of the bluntness of it, and because it's probably not going to be what people are expecting it to be. But if you're up for some really exciting carnage, a really good action thriller, horror action thriller, a lot of gore that also doubles as an over-the-top and blunt political satire, you'll find it in The Hunt.
And even after that final fight, I thought the final fight was for sure that was the climax. Mm-hmm. But then they added a climax right on at the end that couldn't have been better to tie the whole thing up. So good.
So we both really enjoyed The Hunt. Really well done. It was going into theaters for the audience just as the coronavirus was becoming a bigger thing. So right now you could rent it on video on demand for $19.99. Now, really quick, I hear a lot of people complaining about the prices to rent these movies. These prices are not really unfair when you think about it because they were made for theatrical exhibition. You get them for 24 hours, and I realize that most movies are only $4 or $5 to rent. But these are theatrical motion pictures that are still supposed to be in theaters.
Yeah.
And they're still taking a hit with money because let's say you pay $19.99. Who knows how many people are in the house are going to watch it and watch it more than once.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you go to a theater, that would have been 2 tickets for 2 people right there. 5, 6, 7, depending on how many people. I mean, you don't want to be gathering in too big of groups right now, but depending on who's in your house, you could show it to 4 or 5 people. So in a way, the price is fair because you're getting a theatrical film brought to your home. So stop complaining about the $20 price tag.
Yeah, and we got to see it on the big screen for free, but that's just the benefits that we have. One of the few benefits we have of living in California because it's hella expensive. It's almost impossible to survive here. But damn it, we can go see these big movies on a big screen with the writers in attendance. That's the first.
Did you just say hella?
Yeah. I'm getting too comfortable.
This slang is starting to infect your brain.
I know, right?
Yeah, so if you want to check out The Hunt, it's worth a rental.
Yes. And another one that's worth the rental that wouldn't be quite as expensive, another one of the best movies of the year, Color Out of Space.
From director Richard Stanley.
Yep, directed and co-written by Richard Stanley, who did Hardware in 1990 and The Theater Bazaar in 2011, but was mostly blacklisted and hasn't made any movies hardly since Island of Dr. Moreau, where he was fired and blacklisted. And it was co-written by Scarlett Amaris, who co-wrote his part of Theater Bazaar, which is, if you haven't seen that, it's an anthology film that's really fucked up and really good, really well made. And this Color Out of Space is based on a story by H.P. Lovecraft, and it's awesome.
Probably the best H.P. Lovecraft adaptation since Stuart Gordon's Reanimator.
Yeah. So is Richard Stanley going to pick up the torch of Stuart Gordon with making H.P. Lovecraft movies?
I don't know. I don't think so, only because, I mean, I think they're both excellent movies, and they both capture the sense of cosmic horror that H.P. Lovecraft was always aiming for in his work. But this is a little bit more of a serious attempt to adapt H.P. Lovecraft, where I feel like Reanimator, while it is a faithful adaptation, Stuart Gordon was injecting a lot of his own sensibilities, the wackiness, the sense of humor that is not present in the original H.P. Lovecraft stories.
Yeah.
This is an H.P. Lovecraft film that takes its source material very seriously.
Yeah.
And it's also based on one of H.P. Lovecraft's best-known stories, Color Out of Space. And for a movie called Color Out of Space, the colors are very important and very central to the movie and the way it works. And in the story that it's based on, the color is not described because it's supposed to be a color that nobody has ever seen before. That's why it's the Color Out of Space. So the colors in the movie are obviously, you're never going to be able to create an original color. But the way that the brightness of it, the odd color correction, and the way that it's filmed makes colors that you're already familiar with seem new. So they did a good job of trying their best that they could to create a new color for the film.
Well, I was reading, I was fascinated by this. The color that they used, like the purplish looking color, that was magenta.
Magenta.
And the reason why he used magenta is because magenta is, I think it's the only color that we actually have to create in our brains because it doesn't actually exist. It's a color that triggers the part in our brains that registers red and blue,
Mm-hmm.
and then it doesn't recognize it as those colors, so it creates it in our brains and makes it look like that to us only.
And since it's magenta color corrected in a very unusual way where it's brightened up, so that makes it even more of an unnatural color. That's actually pretty fascinating to learn. So they did take a lot of time into trying to make sure that the colors are as imaginative as possible. And if we're calling on the colors a lot for right now, it's only because color is such an important aspect to this movie. It would not be the same without the beautiful visuals and all the color correction. Totally out of this world. It reminded me a little bit of Mandy, and not just because of the presence of Nicolas Cage, just because it has that vaguely psychedelic feel, the vaguely cosmic, otherworldly quality that it possesses.
Yeah. But what I like is how the movie opens. It opens with Nicolas Cage doing very poetic narration to really get you settled into this story. And then much of the first act, it kind of floats around with the whimsical score and it's very touching moments with the family, and you really get to know them intimately. And Nicolas Cage is extra romantic with his wife. That's what reminded me of Mandy too, because they set up just how much he loved his wife before all this fucked up shit starts happening, and it really helps the narrative along, and really helps the intensity and the effectiveness of it, I thought.
I think Nicolas Cage is a big standout. I really think this is his comeback because he did such a good job in Mandy, and we were all getting a little bit burnt out on Nicolas Cage. He started the cliche, but I find with his type of acting style, which is over the top, fits in with heightened surrealistic environments. That's why he's so good in Mandy. That's one of the reasons he's so good in this. So really, he's good in Wild at Heart, which of course David Lynch, probably my favorite role of him as the sailor. That's still my favorite Nicolas Cage role. But he seems to have discovered something else too, because he's an over-the-top actor. He kind of chews on the scenery, but he has to, especially in environments where everything is so heightened and so not based in reality. But he's found a way to navigate a certain kind of emotional realness where even if everything he does seems over the top, the emotions behind it seem genuine. I feel like this is something new for him. He's starting to tap into something a little bit different where he still maintains his acting style, but you still get the sense of a real person behind all the over-the-top theatrics.
Yeah, and I thought he went even a little bit more over the top on this one than he did in Mandy. I thought
some of the dialogue is one of the reasons why some of the lines that come out of his mouth are totally ridiculous.
And because he's in this one, he's meant to start acting much more erratic, and the things, thing starts fucking with his brain, and it starts fucking with everybody's brain. It starts, you know, this meteor lands, it puts out this weird, strange color, and all of a sudden some guy starts talking to Nicolas Cage's son from the well, and you just hear this whispering coming from the well and the boy responding to it, and everything just gets progressively stranger. The score gets more pulsating and dominating as it goes along, where it started as whimsical and floating along, then it starts pounding the narrative into you.
The colors and the visuals, which already start off a little bit strange, a little bit off, by the time it ends, it's gone so far over the top that you feel like the movie transforming before your eyes. And one of the things that I liked about it is everybody's acting strange in the film, and the movie pulls the viewer along with you, because there's something a little magnetizing about this movie, and it's a little bit hypnotic in the way that it's directed. So you start to feel what the characters start to feel, that, man, if these strange happenings were going on around me, I'd probably start getting hypnotized by the color and start succumbing to all of the strangeness around me. And by the end, the visuals are just so batshit, so over the top. The colors have completely taken over everything, where before the strange color correction was just peeking in and out. By the end, you are seeing a cornucopia of visuals that I can't even put into words or describe. You just have to see it.
Yeah, and another part I love about how when the meteor lands, it becomes a different movie, and it starts progressively getting stranger and stranger. And then it's kind of a unspoken strangeness where you're not quite sure what's going on. The characters aren't sure what's going on. And then they introduce the squatter that's living on their land, played by Tommy Chong. His name's Ezra. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes another movie where the strangeness starts being put into words, and it's very effective in that way too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because some of that dialogue, I could not believe how well Tommy Chong did a serious role, and there was still some wit in his performance, but it was very serious, very grounded, and made me feel very. It made me feel closer to the strangeness. Like, it brought me in closer to it, made me feel it more, I think.
I agree. Another thing that another reason to check this out for horror fans. I wouldn't call this a body horror movie. This is definitely cosmic surreal horror. But there's one element of body horror that's probably the best piece of body horror since since anything David Cronenberg does. I don't want to ruin it for the audience, but it involves two characters, the mother and the son. And it's deeply uncomfortable. It's disturbing. It's kind of uncanny. And I don't think I've ever seen that done on screen in the way they did it. To me, it's worthy of David Cronenberg at his finest. When you think of The Brood and the mom and the fly and the transformation, this is the best bit of that business since Cronenberg, in my opinion. Anyway.
And on top of that, they add the extra thing with the alpacas, and then the same type of thing happens. The same type of thing happens to the alpacas, and holy shit, because it starts out and they add a layer of cuteness to the movie, and like, that's kind of strange. This family raises alpacas, and they even explain the reasons why and everything, and then it becomes part of the narrative and part of the strangeness at the end. Is so fucked up.
Yeah, but that's what makes it messed up. Is there's an element of cuteness, but that cuteness is turned inside out. So you become even more repulsed by what's going on at the end. There's literally. Did you see a little bit of John Carpenter's The Thing in here? I saw some influence. There's some imagery that seems like it was influenced by The Thing, so I could see that being a jumping off point for this movie.
Yeah, I've seen shades of Rob Bottin in the practical makeup.
Oh yeah,
they had to have been inspired by him.
Excellent practical makeup too. And the practical makeup, the realistic gore effects, and the strange, gross, uncanny body horror put in the visual scheme of surrealism and really over-the-top colors gives you a unique experience. And for me, right now, it's probably the best horror movie of 2020 so far. I really did enjoy The Hunt, but I thought this was even more imaginative, more original, more unique as a film experience.
Yeah, my when I watched Invisible Man, that was my favorite of the year so far. And then when I watched The Hunt, I liked that a little bit better than Invisible Man, and then when I watch Color Out of Space, I like that even more than The Hunt. So it just keeps getting better and better.
I like The Invisible Man a little more than The Hunt personally, but all three of them are definitely worth reviewing. But Color Out of Space is probably the best pure horror movie to come out this year so far.
Did you notice something else that was kind of funny about Color Out of Space? The two male characters, Nicolas Cage and his son, their reaction to the purple glow was like to stand and stare at it and freak out on it. And then the girls, the mom and the daughter, their reaction to it was to face it head on and try to do rituals to stop it. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And the guys are running around, oh my God. And the girls are like, no, we have to figure out what we're going to do to stop this.
It turns the males into bumbling idiots.
Yeah.
Magnetized.
Which isn't that far off from reality. But it seemed like this alien presence was also affecting them that way. It seemed to target the boy in particular, and it seemed to make Nicolas Cage act erratic, where the girls weren't acting as erratic as he was.
Yeah.
But I think this film proves that if you want effective weirdness, you need to build an intimate relationship with the characters, and that's exactly what Richard Stanley did with this movie.
This is another thing that Panos, I don't know how to say his name, right? Panos Cosmatos or Panos
Cosmatos, yeah.
Cosmatos did the same thing with Mandy. Had a very heightened out there environment, but it was grounded in emotions that felt real and recognizably human. So, Color Out of Space, best horror movie of the year so far.
And I'm extremely proud of Richard Stanley. I'm really going to go back and see Hardware. Mm-hmm. And I can't believe I haven't seen that yet, but it's supposed to be really good. And he did another one that people were calling a Terminator knockoff, but apparently it has a cult following too. So I want to go back and watch his old stuff, because this guy really deserves a chance. Because look what happened to this guy, how he's been plagued with nothing but problems and butting heads with studio heads and stuff about creative differences. And it seems like because he has a very singular vision, he has a vision of what he wants to do with these things. And like the reason why he was fired from Island of Dr. Moreau, he came in, he had an entire vision for it. And all of a sudden he starts working it. He's not even like a month into it, and they fire him because they don't like what he's doing. And then it ends up, I think they took one or two words from his script and just completely turned it into something else. And for that to happen to him, that must be devastating for a filmmaker. And to come back 20 years later with a film like Color Out of Space, bravo.
Yes, bravo.
And he's saying that this is the first part in a Lovecraft trilogy he's going to do, and he said the next part is going to be done with horror. So we'll see.
We'll see.
I mean, anybody in their right mind should throw money at that after seeing that movie.
Color Out of Space, as gross and as bizarre as it is on time, was kind of a delight for me. It had the exact things that I kind of look for in a movie, specifically horror. And if that was a delight, the next film that we are going to discuss was one of the most unpleasant experiences I've had watching a movie recently, and it's kind of a compliment. Yeah,
The Golden Glove, another one from this year. It's a German film, written and directed by Fatih Akin, based on a novel by Hans Strunk. It's a true story starring Jonas Dassler as serial killer Fritz Hunke, and follows his killing spree from 1970 to 1975. And the Golden Glove is the bar where he picked up most of his victims. And it's gory, it's unrelenting. It's got about a 50-50 rating among critics. Some critics love it for its realness and for how well crafted it is. A lot of them are disgusted with it. I think it has no artistic merit. It's just brutality and just vile nastiness.
It is vile nastiness
from beginning to end, dude. And we meet the killer in the first scene. In the very first scene, he's stuffing a body into a trash bag and dragging it out of his apartment so he can chop it up and hide it in different places. And then you see news coming across. It's like a print press going across, and you see the news coming up that he's about this killing spree, but nobody knows who it is yet. So that's just the first couple minutes in the movie, and the rest of it is just him killing his victims. And did you realize this guy only had 4 victims? Didn't he kill more than 4 people in the movie? It seemed like dozens.
It seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
But my thing with this movie is I can understand the split reaction. I respect this movie, and I recognize the artistic value behind it, and there is artistic value behind it, more than I actually enjoy it. I definitely couldn't take my eyes off of it for a while, but it's a movie that I found really repulsive. It's disgusting. It wallows in filth and grime and steaminess and sleaziness. And there are a couple, I mean, I say that, I kept my eyes on it, but there's more than a handful of scenes in this movie that are hard to watch. And it's not just the killing scenes, it's not just the murder, it's the character himself, the main character. What's the actor's name? Jonas Dassler.
Jonas Dassler. Did you see this guy?
Yeah, he's not even that bad looking. I thought he was.
He's a friggin' Adonis, and in the movie he's a vile monster.
And in the movie, they did a really good job with the makeup. He's hideous to look at, but it's not just the makeup, it's the performance that makes this movie hard to watch. This is a disgusting person, really vile. Even if they weren't a serial killer, you would still be grossed out and disgusted by him. His apartment is terrible. You could practically smell the filth. That's the impression I got, is that we spend so much time in a shitty little apartment that you get to almost feel like you could smell the dead bodies rotting in there. The sense of decay, the sense of filth, the maggots in this apartment complex. Yeah. And the way that he carries himself almost like a piece of trash. The way that he fronts over and his body language, the way that he speaks, gives you the creeps. If you ever saw this person in real life, you would go in the exact opposite direction. Yeah. And what makes the movie even harder to stomach is that the victims that he picks are also filthy, disgusting people. But then again, they would have to be filthy and disgusting to be taken in by him, to even want to go near him and to want to enter into his house. So that makes sense that his victims are almost as disgusting and vile as he is. But still feel sorry for them, though.
Yeah, they're not just disgusting, they're just tragically sad, where you feel so sad for them. And, like, he cuts up the bodies and hides them in his wall. And you can see the women react to it. The moment they walk in, they grab their nose. And why did they stay there with him? And how did he go to this same bar and pick up this many women and take home and mutilate them and abuse them in front of people and never get caught?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, it was disgusting.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's hard to look at. The murders are not the type of kill scenes or gore scenes that's designed for gore hounds or for people like, if you think of like the Tom Savinis or the Greg Nicoteros, when you think of the creative gore that horror fans take a delight in. It's hard to take any pleasure in any of the killings in this movie because it's so bleak. Sorry, we got cut off again, but I was just saying it's the type of violence and gore that's really unpleasant. It's not the type that's going to get gore hounds excited, or you're going to look at the effects and go, ooh, wow, cool. This is kind of the type of violence that is just going to be a turnoff for most people.
Even more than The Hunt, you could feel every hit, and it looked like it landed. And the sound effects were extra loud and wet, so every time he hit someone, it was just disgusting.
If you're watching this podcast and not listening to it, Mike has something to show you. This won't work as well if you're listening to it, but show the audience what the character looks like.
While I have my phone off the deck, I'm going to turn it around now and show you my screen. This is the guy in the movie. Mm-hmm. This is the actor.
Hideous.
And here he is in real life. Look at that. What a transformation, dude.
That's fucking fantastic makeup because you can't even tell that that's the same person.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the look of it either. It's just his performance, and he was just so disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vile. It just leaves you with that feeling of you want to wash yourself. and you want to delouse his apartment, dude. Another thing that kind of disturbed me with all this nastiness and brutality going on in these sad older women, then they shift the narrative to this little schoolgirl, this pretty little schoolgirl, and he fixates on her. And then through the rest of the movie, you keep seeing images of her while he's doing these disgusting things to these poor old women. And it's mostly toothless women.
Mhm.
And that toothlessness plays into the sexuality, if you know what I mean. Ugh.
Yeah. It's gross.
But he's doing these disgusting things, and then it keeps showing this little girl that he keeps thinking of. And it adds a layer of disgust. You don't know why they're going to this girl. You don't know where it's, but then it comes full circle at the end, and you see why that little girl was introduced. And it was kind of a cheap trick from the director, if you ask me, but it was still effective. Like he messed around with your expectations and made you think you were going to see something with this girl. And I was like, please no.
Mhm.
Please no, don't touch this poor little girl. No, don't do it. I'll turn this fucking thing off.
Yeah, it's kind of good that they don't go that route.
And then that one lady moves in with him. I guess it was his wife for a while or something. And
Yeah,
he
there's
made
a
her
character-
sign.
There's a
He
character
made
that
her-
moves in with him, and
Yeah.
she's kind of gross herself, though.
Yeah, and she mentioned she has a daughter. He makes her sign an agreement that he gets to have pieces of her daughter to do what he wants. Like, what the hell kind of person doesn't run straight out the door, dude?
I think another interesting thing about the movie is I think he's living in poverty too, and it's not a very nice area of Germany where he lives, and the bar that he goes to is kind of gross, and it's kind of like a cheap little dive bar. The way and the filth and the squalor, the I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the feeling I get off of this is that it's an area that is defined by poverty, filth, and desperation.
Yeah.
So I think those factors, the desperation and the poverty, contributes to the griminess and the filth and makes people more susceptible to somebody like this because they don't really have very much to turn to. This is what the norm is in their world. And I think that is also another aspect of this movie that makes it a little unpleasant too, is it really sinks you into the seediness of that world.
They introduce, like let's say they introduce his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Brother's infinitely more interesting character. You see the writing come in that he's an interesting character because there's nothing interesting about the main character. He's disgusting, he's vile, there's no redeeming qualities about him. So I'm not so sure why the director concentrated on so much on making such good supporting characters, because the brother was a good character. They show him try to quit alcohol. Why? And they show it after he quits alcohol, he gets a new job and befriends a couple at his new job. Why? And
I think it's just to show the main character's inability to live a normal life and adapt, because the brother is kind of grimy in his own way, but he's also a little bit witty, so he has the shittiness of his brother, but it's easier to understand why somebody might be taken aback like the brother than the main character. And I guess this is to show how maladjusted he is, maybe.
Yeah, and he's pleasant in comparison. You know, the brother is pleasant in comparison to him. And then in the bar, they show some interesting characters too. So there's some little interesting characters throughout, but I can't really get why, because it's just every other scene besides that didn't have those colorful characters in it was just constant depravity and constant violence, and with no purpose and no artistic merit. It's just brutality for the sake of brutality. It reminded me of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, but it was more well crafted. This one was a little more polished, and that made it somehow nastier for me.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Henry Portrait of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, but I think that movie was disgusting and vile, but a little bit more disturbing. Actually, for me, it's quite a bit more disturbing than The Golden Glove, which is not to say that this movie isn't disturbing. It is. They both have the vile aspects to them, but this one grossed me out more and repulsed me more than outright disturbed me. if that makes sense. They both have both elements. I feel like Henry Portrait puts a little bit more emphasis on how disturbing it is and less on the filth and grime and repulsiveness which is there. This one does that too, but it puts more emphasis on the filth, the repulsiveness and the grime, and slightly less on it being disturbing.
Just like with a Serbian film, it being more polished does not help the vileness of it, and it doesn't help the nastiness of it. It just makes it more nasty because it puts it more in your face.
Yeah.
And more detailed. Ugh. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you can almost smell that stench coming from the apartment. But I do think it was cool the way he got caught. And like I said, it was effective bringing the schoolgirl story full circle. But I just thought it was a cheap trick overall. I wish he could have found some other, I don't know, some other artistic, creative way to display it. But you really can't with a person like that, right?
No, I don't think so.
You really can't show any humanity because it was like there was none there.
I think that's part of the point. I don't know if I'd call this a recommendation. I would recommend it if you know what you're getting into and if this type of horror film is your thing. If this is not your thing, then it's probably not going to be for you. In fact, this movie is not for most people, I would say. Most people are not going to enjoy this, even horror fans.
Yeah, because it's really gory and violent, but not the fun type of gory and violent.
Yeah, and like we said, it is well made and it does have artistic value. And it's worth checking out if this is the type of thing that you're looking for, but it's not something I could recommend to too many people. However, if you're looking for this type of unbelievable realism, this type of filth and despair, if this is your thing, you can't go wrong with it.
I would recommend it, if for nothing else, but for the performance of that lead actor and the transformation he did and how realistic it is.
Just know what it is when you're getting into it. It's very good at what it sets out to do. Another film that I caught up on, which is one of your favorites from last year, and it's much more pleasant than the Golden Glove, was Satanic Panic.
Oh, yes.
Satanic Panic was... I had a blast watching this movie. It's not perfect. I think the movie does have its few flaws in it, and especially with the script, I feel like some of the structure towards the end gets to the point where it's starting to wrap itself up in a way that feels cliche and predictable. But just when you feel like it's going that route, it spins and goes in a completely another direction. So the ending kind of redeems the fact that the last act was kind of starting to get wobbly. It had its redemption moments with a good touch of surrealism in it. And it reminded me a lot of Ready or Not. Although Ready or Not, they both are about rich people, somebody stuck in a rich person's house being chased around by devil worshippers, wealthy people. Both seem to suggest that wealth comes from making deals with Satan. Seems to be a big thing. And it's so weird because I know that they didn't plan it. It wasn't intentional that these movies would come out around the same time. It just so happens. I really think that's purely coincidental. And they both approach it in a different way. I feel like this one is interesting because it puts more... I mean, it's in the title. So it puts more aspect on the satanic elements of it and the rituals, where in Ready or Not, that's a part of it, but that kind of takes a background to what to the gore and to the action and to the suspense that's going on. Where in Satanic Panic, those elements are put more up front.
Yeah, and they don't just portray rituals. It's like they perform the ritual in front of your eyes. Like they literally go through the whole thing, all the incantations and everything.
Yeah. There's a couple of moments where the humor didn't fully work for me, but for the most part, it was pretty funny. It was pretty humorous. It had good gore effects, good makeup. I like the idea of the rules, how every demon in hell is a stickler for rules. So nobody can get anything done in this movie. The evil people can't, because they have so many damn rules that they have to follow that they slow themselves down. And I like that at the end they kind of popped in some level of surrealism into there that I did not expect, especially with the last demon in the movie, which I'm not going to reveal what it is. But I like the portrayal of the last demon in the film. Caught me off guard, and it was quite a bit different than what than most portrayals of demons in films.
And the script from Grady Hendrix was really clever. I think this was a bit more campier than Ready or Not was, but I think it's more clever than Ready or Not. The snappy dialogue, and I think that's the reason it kind of started going off the rails a little bit in the third act before it came up to that great climax. I think it's because it was they were throwing a lot at you, you know, a lot of snappy jokes, a lot of interesting lines, and it just constantly through the whole movie it was going. So I knew it was liable to go off, you know, off the rails a little bit here and there, but it totally came together in the end. It was great direction by Chelsea Stardust too. And how great were Rebecca Romaine and Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell didn't have as much of a part as I thought he was going to be, but it was memorable. I thought his part was pretty memorable and a little bit humorous. Little weird direction he went in towards the end of it, but it was funny. Rebecca Romaine did a good job. Most of the cast, the supporting cast, do a good job of these Satanists. They're scary and they're kind of intimidating, but they're clowns. That's the best way to describe it. They're almost clownish in how they carry about their business. That how are these people so inept? These people keep fucking up every little chance that they get. Every little thing that they do is a bad mistake. It feels like everybody is so power hungry in this cult that most of the time they're thinking about how they're going to advance and how they're going to get to the top, that they miss basic things that could save them in the future. For example, backstabbing could have been handled a lot better if you were really going to backstab somebody. The way they handle the cult leader's daughter was foolish. I was like, you know, all of these things, if you all were so vain and self-obsessed, you'd be much better Satanists than you are.
The daughter was clearly more intelligent than they were.
Satanic Panic is actually available on Shudder. And if you didn't hear our last message podcast, just let you know, if you put in the code SHUTIN right now, you'll get a month free of Shudder. And even after that, it's only like $5 a month, so it's cheap. It's good entertainment right now. And I feel like Golden Glove is also on Shudder, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a couple of the movies that we talked about are on Shudder. The other two, The Hunt and Color Out of Space, you're going to have to rent if you want to watch them. The Hunt at a heftier price, and Color Out of Space you can get at just $5 or $6, I think.
Yeah, and I think Redbox has it. You can get it for a couple bucks there.
Yeah.
If you want to brave going to the store and going to Redbox.
It was a really fun movie. Really liked it a lot. Very enjoyable. And I want to see what the director, Chelsea Stardust, what she does next.
I'm going to talk about, I've done this a couple times on the podcast. I like to rewatch something, certain things that I didn't quite connect with the first time and get a fresh perspective on it. Mm-hmm. And I've done that a couple times, and I did it this time with Mayhem, directed by Joe Lynch from 2017. It's starring Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead and Samara Weaving from The Babysitter and Ready or Not we were just talking about, Ash vs. Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. And there's also a good performance from Stephen Brand, who plays the evil CEO. But it's directed by Joe Lynch, who directed Wrong Turn 2, Knights of Badassdom, Everly, and Point Blank, which I thought Point Blank was his best film so far, but now that I've rewatched Mayhem, I think this is his best film. Mm-hmm. It's written by Matthias Caruso, and it was his first feature film. Great cinematography from Steve Gaynor, who also did A Dirty Shame as a John Waters film. Mm-hmm. Mysterious Skin with Joseph Gordon-Levitt was really good, and Super with Ellen Page and Rainn Wilson. So it's really good cinematography from him, Steve Gaynor. And it's about a virus that starts spreading inside an office building that causes people to act on their darkest impulses.
So there's a reason you chose to watch this again.
Yeah, well, I actually just wanted to watch something fun. It was one of those where it was late at night and I wanted to put on something that I'd seen before, so in case I fell asleep.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be a big deal. So I wanted to give this another chance, and I was engrossed from the first frame. I don't know what it was the first time when I watched it, it just didn't connect. Where this time it did. Joe Lynch's style really comes through on this one more than I realized the first time.
Mhm.
And I think it's because I watched it it came out around the same time as Belko Experiment, which was a detriment to this film, I think. Belko Experiment is more straightforward. It takes this concept and tells a straightforward story of it, where with these guys in this office building are just kicking the shit out of each other. So it felt much more the grindhouse aesthetic that this one was also going for, but there's also a clever script and good performances that come with this, and the style. So it's a little more, it's a bit more of a subtle approach to the concept than Belko Experiment was. But just the style of the directing and these performances makes it so much better. And it's an excellent pacing with just enough time to get to know the characters before the insanity starts.
Mhm.
It's just campy enough to keep it fun, just clever enough and well crafted enough to keep it grounded.
Mhm.
So it's the same way throughout the whole thing. Just when you think it's going toward the silly campy end, it grounds itself, and it's usually the good performances and the good script. And a combination of good performances, good script, and Joe Lynch's directing really keeps it grounded and makes it really entertaining. It's the most stylistic flair I've seen from Joe Lynch, and I really want to see more of that from him, because I think it's his bread and butter. There's some grindhouse elements to the story where it's about the underdog who just got fired, and a badass scream queen battled their way through murderous co-workers to reach the evil CEO on the top floor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very campy and grindhouse aesthetic there, but the dialogue and the performances is what keeps it stimulating and takes it to another level besides being just a violent movie. This is another one where the violence is really well filmed, just like in The Golden Glove. Joe Lynch is excellent with it. Just like in The Golden Gloves, he shows the impact. The sound design is a little bit louder than usual, but not over the top, so it makes it that much more effective, and you feel like you feel the hits. And a decent amount of well done gore, not a whole lot of it, but a decent amount, and a good amount of comedy and likable characters. Samara Weaving shines as usual, so does Stephen Yeun, and they have great chemistry. So each of them individual have their own kind of star quality, and then them together, they have to do another movie together. Their chemistry is off the charts on this one. Mm-hmm. So I had such a blast with this one that I watched it twice.
Cool.
So another complete turnaround for me, much like with the Serbian film, where I watched it for the second time. It was a completely different experience than the first time.
I'm gonna have to check that out then.
So if you guys watch a movie that you don't think is bad, but it didn't quite connect with you, give it another chance, especially with horror, and especially with directors like Joe Lynch. They'll give you something to latch on to every time you watch it. Because when I watched it twice back to back, I enjoyed it just as much both times.
Nice.
So highly recommended. Mayhem. That's also on Shudder.
Before we go, I'm going to discuss a movie that I need to catch up on Mayhem. I'm going to discuss a movie that I saw recently for the first time, also on Shudder. This has been on my radar for a while. It's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This is an Iranian vampire movie that I've been hearing about for a good while now. It's directed by another female director. Her name is Anna Lily Amarpour, and it's starring Sheila Van. It's shot in black and white. It's very artistic, and it has elements of a Western to it and elements of a love story. It revolves around an Iranian vampire in this kind of small, very quiet town where she just looks for her victims by seducing them. She comes across as very innocent. Like the title suggests, the way that she lures her victims in is when she walks around at night in Iran, she looks like an unaccompanied young woman who is vulnerable. There's a lot of crime and a lot of poverty in this area, so naturally a lot of criminals or sleazy people will see her walking and try to take advantage of that, and that's how she lures her victims, and she uses her surroundings to her advantage. She ends up falling for somebody who she originally was going to kill, but she ends up falling for them, and it's very nice, it's very romantic, and you get to see the human side to her, that you could see that somewhere deep inside of her there used to be a human being who longed for love and who wanted to be a normal person but has just been cursed with this affliction. Overall, really enjoyable movie. Very artistic. It's an interesting hybrid. I like the fact that she's also a skater in the movie too. Although I have to be quite honest, I was a little bit disappointed just because of all the hype that I heard about this film, about how incredible it is. I definitely did enjoy it. I do see its value. It kept me engaged and through the whole time. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. But by the end, I felt like I just wanted more. Like I needed to see more from the story, a little bit more from this movie. As it is, it's stylish, it's well-directed, and it's engaging, but not quite the masterpiece that I was hoping for.
So tell me if I'm right. From the trailer, it looks to me like a cross between maybe Let the Right One In and The Eyes of My Mother type of aesthetic.
It does. It actually reminds me a lot of both of those, but I actually like Let the Right One In more than this, and
My Mother?
Eyes of My Mother. I like both of those films more as horror films. They're both more satisfying, and they both leave you feeling like you'd seen a full experience. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was good, but those movies left me a lot more sated by the time they were through. This one left me feeling like I wanted more. But it's definitely worth a watch. It is a solid film. I can't deny how beautifully it's shot. The cinematography is magnificent. It approaches those films in terms of its aesthetic, in terms of its quality, in terms of its direction. I just felt like the script could have put a little bit more in there as far as the character. They could have added more. We could have learned a little bit more about the vampire. We could have learned, they could have followed up on the story that it was building up a little bit more. And some of the scenes, while they were good, they could have been a little bit scarier. It just felt like every element that I enjoyed, I wanted to see more of it.
So kind of just dabbled in multiple good elements.
Yeah, and they're all good, and it does it all well, but I felt like if it committed to one of those elements a little bit more, it might have been a more satisfying experience.
Okay.
That's just my perspective anyway. Some people really love this movie. I mean, I've seen reactions from it where people love it, they think it's great. I could totally see why it gets the kind of praise that it does, but I personally could have used a little bit more. Also on Shudder. Well, that's all the movies I have to talk about right now.
Cool, and we'll be back next week for more.
Yes.
In the meantime, I believe we're going to post these videos somewhere so you can see our mugs during the podcast. So watch out for those on our page on Facebook.com/Pickles Horror Show or on Instagram @Pickles Horror Show. And stay tuned for updates on my feature film that James and I made, Pay Up. We've entered it in 5 major festivals so far, and we're going to enter it in a bunch of small ones after this, but we've picked our 5 big ones. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed. We'll keep you posted on that. And come back next week, and we're going to discuss more movies. And I have another guest next week, Ryan Joseph Murphy. He's another actor and producer. He's going to be on next week.
All right. Well, until next week, folks, happy horror.
Happy horror, everyone.